The WNBA just got caught in what could be the biggest ratings scandal in modern sports history, and this time there's no smooth PR spin that can save them. What began as a victory lap for so-called record-breaking finals viewership has spiraled into a full-blown credibility crisis that threatens to unravel everything the league has tried to build. ESPN proudly announced that the 2025 WNBA Finals opener between the New York Liberty and the Minnesota Lynx drew an average of 1.9 million viewers, peaking at 2.5 million, the most watched finals since 1997. For a moment, it seemed like women's basketball had finally made it. Headlines were bold, tweets were triumphant, and ESPN anchors hailed it as proof that the league had arrived. But within hours, that fairy tale collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. Sports fans and analysts immediately smelled something off. If this game was such a massive hit, why wasn't anyone actually talking about it? No trending hashtags, no viral highlights, no locker room debates lighting up sports talk shows, nothing. The cultural silence was deafening. How could a game allegedly watched by millions completely vanish from the public consciousness overnight? That's when the investigation began, and what it uncovered would shake the sports world to its core. When fans tried to verify ESPN's claims through Nielsen, the trusted authority in television ratings, they ran into a brick wall. The official data wasn't available. Instead, ESPN cited Nielsen estimates, vague numbers backed by data they refused to release publicly. It was like a student grading their own test and bragging about an A+. Red flags started waving everywhere. And buried deep in the fine print where they hoped no one would look was the smoking gun. Nielsen had quietly introduced a new measurement system called Big Data Plus Panel, and that changed everything. This new system didn't just track who was actively watching. It counted anyone who happened to be near a TV playing the game. People in bars, airports, restaurants, gyms, even those walking past muted screens. You could glance up at a TV for 10 seconds while waiting for your burger, and suddenly you were part of that record-breaking audience. The league that spent years fighting for legitimacy had just inflated its numbers using a system that equated passive proximity with actual viewership. It wasn't about fans anymore. It was about counting bodies. The timing couldn't have been more suspicious. The new system rolled out right before the finals, conveniently in time for ESPN and the WNBA to trumpet their historic success. Critics called it the most blatant ratings manipulation they'd ever seen. They didn't technically fake the numbers. They just redefined what watching meant until the data looked flattering enough to sell. One analyst compared it to adding zeros to the scoreboard when you're losing. And the WNBA's credibility started crumbling right there. Fans immediately drew comparisons to the Caitlin Clark era earlier in 2025, when Clark was healthy and leading the Indiana Fever. Through the playoffs, her games were pulling verified numbers that dwarfed these so-called finals ratings. Those were real viewers, people tuning in by choice, not background noise in a sports bar. But when Clark suffered her season-ending injury, the league lost its biggest draw. Suddenly, without her, the audience vanished, and the WNBA was left scrambling to prove it still mattered. Sophie Cunningham, the Fever's fiery new addition, had tried to keep fan interest alive. Her chemistry with Clark and her passionate play had brought genuine excitement to Indiana's fan base. But the finals didn't feature Clark, Cunningham, or the Fever. Instead, fans got a matchup between the Liberty and the Lynx, two teams respected on the court, but far from cultural phenomena. The WNBA's biggest stars, the ones actually capable of drawing authentic engagement, were on the sidelines. So what did the league do? They manufactured engagement through math. The backlash was swift and brutal. Social media lit up with accusations of fraud. Reddit threads dissected the numbers, calling the whole thing Hollywood box office manipulation for sports. The phrase "ghost watchers" began trending, mocking the phantom millions who supposedly watched but left no trace, no posts, no clips, no buzz. Even longtime WNBA supporters admitted something wasn't adding up. How could you claim record viewership when arenas couldn't sell out, when tickets went for $6, and when even ESPN's own talk shows barely mentioned the games? The league's proudest moment had become its biggest embarrassment, and that's when the silence became damning. ESPN, the same network hyping the historic success, suddenly went quiet. Their daily shows didn't celebrate it, their social accounts barely mentioned it, and their analysts moved on as if it never happened. When your own broadcast partner doesn't back up your bragging rights, it's not hard to guess why. They knew the numbers were inflated. They knew the illusion couldn't last. To make matters worse, advertisers and sponsors, who base their investments on these ratings, started asking questions. If the WNBA's record audience included random people in airports, then brands had just paid millions for an audience that didn't actually exist. That's not just bad PRs, that's financial fraud. And in a league that's never been profitable, this kind of deception could scare investors away permanently. The most painful part? This scandal overshadows real progress. Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham brought legitimate momentum to the league. Fans were starting to care, merchandise was selling, and conversations about women's basketball were happening naturally. But instead of letting that organic growth continue, the league got greedy. They wanted to look bigger than they were, to force a moment that wasn't earned. Now, even genuine growth looks fake. They've handed ammunition to critics who've long said women's sports can't succeed without gimmicks. The truth is harsh but simple. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA is struggling to stay relevant. Her impact was monumental. Every game she played felt like an event, every stat line a headline. She didn't just boost ratings. She redefined what women's basketball could mean to mainstream sports fans. And without her, the league reverted to its old struggles: poor attendance, limited buzz, and dwindling interest. This scandal doesn't just expose a ratings problem. It exposes a dependency problem. The WNBA's entire brand now revolves around one player. Instead of addressing this reality, league officials have chosen to hide behind corporate jargon about modern measurement techniques. ESPN, for its part, has remained suspiciously quiet, a silence that speaks volumes. They're hoping fans will forget. But in the digital age, nothing stays buried for long. Screenshots, archives, and receipts ensure that every misleading headline lives forever. The damage is already done. Sponsors will think twice. Media partners will renegotiate contracts. And fans, the few who truly cared, now feel betrayed. What should have been a celebration of women's basketball's evolution has turned into a cautionary tale about what happens when you fake success instead of earning it. The league could have told the truth. Nobody expected them to match the NFL or NBA overnight. Fans would have respected honest numbers showing gradual progress. But instead, they chose deception. And in doing so, they've jeopardized everything they were trying to build. This isn't just a PR crisis. It's a credibility apocalypse. And as the smoke clears, one truth stands above the rest. You can't cheat your way to greatness. Not in sports. Not with fans. Not when trust is the only currency that matters. If you think this scandal is as outrageous as we do, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Let us know in the comments. Can the WNBA recover from this? Or has the league permanently destroyed its credibility chasing fake numbers? Your thoughts might just shape our next story.